Maestro Thielemann, welcome to the Digital Concert Hall Interval Talk, and thank you for taking the time to talk to us this evening.
Pleasure.
Now, of course, we should be talking about Brahms and Schoenberg and the deeper meaning of these wonderful pieces that we're playing tonight. But I wanted to start with some more personal things because you have a very special relationship to this orchestra. And I believe your debut here was not as a conductor, but as a cembalist in 1980, if I'm correct.
Yes, I think it was in a Karajan Brandenburg, Bach Brandenburg concerto. And he used to have two harpsichords, with one he was sitting with the back to the public, and the other one, and he would not play all the notes, as I remember. And he wanted the other partner to play everything, because sometimes he would just conduct with his wonderful hands, and then he needed some harpsichord notes too. And he would look quite unamused when he noticed that something was not together or wrong, and so, but it was quite difficult to follow him because he was not really conducting. He was making wonderful music with his hands, and I was not used to this kind of music making, and I had to look to the cello player next to me, and when he was playing, then
Did you have to watch his hands to see when he was playing and when he wasn't?
No, I couldn't, because it was just behind, where the keyboard is. But I noticed that very often he didn't.
Oh.
That was my part.
That was your job. You were actually in the Karajan Academy, which is the Berlin Philharmonic Academy for young students, and you got into the academy as a viola player.
Oh, yeah. I had an audition here.
On this stage?
On this stage, and Karajan was sitting somewhere, and I think he was not very happy with my first playing. And I think he said something like, yeah, you should learn to express more or whatever, but I had technical problems, and as it is always, and I mean, sometimes one has technical problems, and it was wonderful working then with Giusto Capone, who was, I don't know, at a certain point something switched around, so light on or light off. And the light went on, and I knew how to do things I wanted to do. And I think he said in the beginning, I know that you have it, but there is something in between we have to cancel, or we have to break. And then he broke the ice, and it was wonderful. And I was in the academy. I learned a lot, because I mean he was just such a wonderful player and a wonderful teacher.
Giusto Capone was a wonderful viola player, and also the father of a first violinist now, Alessandro Capone. And he told me a story of when you went to his house for a viola lesson, and you were learning the Brahms sonata, and at some point you said, Professor Capone, why don't you play and I'll accompany you? And you sat down at the piano, and at that point Professor Capone didn't know how good you were at the piano, and you accompanied him.
Yeah, I did. Yes, I did. Yeah, because I played since I was 4 or 5 years old. I played the piano, and once, when I was very young, too young, I thought I would be a pianist, but then I found out that organ was an instrument which was much more to my taste, and then I tried to teach myself the organ, which is, as you probably know, not easy, because you have all these pedals and then different keyboards. And so my piano teacher found out that something was wrong with my technique or not so good anymore, and she asked me, do you play the organ secretly? And I said, yes, I did that. Or I'm doing that, and she said, stop. And then I was very interested in a string instrument, and it turned out that, as I have big hands, so the violin teacher said, why don't you try the viola? And I was immediately fascinated by the sound of the viola, and I always thought it's very good to play two instruments. And then I thought, if I cannot make be a good organ player, I thought it would be wonderful. Which instrument has more colors than an organ? And that's an orchestra. And so I decided, I think you should conduct, just to get all these colors out of somewhere. And so I tried to become a conductor.
Tried to become a conductor, understatement of the year. It must have been an incredible experience, though, to be at the academy and be able to experience Karajan from the front and not from the back.
What I always I was later his assistant piano playing and watching him rehearsing. The disturbing thing was, or what I until now find really disturbing, that I didn't know how he got all these results, because I knew him, working with him, when he had already made his big career, and he had drawn out of the orchestra these wonderful colors by not doing so much. Yeah. And that was something, first you think, I can do that easily, and then after a while you realize, probably I cannot do that easily, because no one else can do it easily, and other conductors are working so much on the podium and he doesn't do anything. So that is disturbing until now, not so much as one knows. Then at a certain point it is the result of 20-25 years of working with the same orchestra.
Yeah, sure.
And of 60 years of conducting presence on stage. And I mean, if you see him, and I was then later conducting in Italy very often and watching TV and seeing Karajan in very early TV recordings from La Scala and from other orchestras, so of the early 50s. And I mean, I didn't recognize him. I recognized his face and his hair somehow, but the way he conducted was so different as that what I have experienced here.
I think you're right. It must have been this long collaboration. In the end, he just let the orchestras, like he let them drive themselves.
They knew. And I mean, that is what I really learned from him, that the more you insist and you know your musicians and they know you, then, you know, with your eye or even without looking at them or one finger indicates already, and they knew.
They did.
Yeah, but that's what's probably conducting about, because beating is boring.
This orchestra's changed a lot since you worked with it all those years ago. Obviously, the personnel has changed, but we're playing a piece tonight, a huge piece, Pelléas or Melisande by Schoenberg, and of course, your job as the conductor, the driver of this huge automobile. In Pelléas and Melisande, for me as one of the musicians at the back there, it's just loud all the time. And that was what must be the challenge for the conductors, is to make something transparent.
As you remember, during the rehearsals, I tried to, I would, if I went with Schoenberg to have something to eat or to have a drink, I would ask him, Arnold, why did you write in every fifth bar a fortissimo? Please tell me, because they cannot play always forte, fortissimo, fortissimo, fortissimo. I think he would have said, because it's all about Ausdruck, so expression.
It was all about love.
It's intensity. I mean, it is intense, and so that means that you have to reduce. And what I try to do is that I try to look to the climaxes properly. Which climax is the climax, or is it a smaller climax and then a bigger one, and so on. And that's that you have somehow you have to organize, to analyze, and to make music together. So it's
a hard job.
It is a hard job. No, it is a hard job in this music because you can make so many mistakes. The analyzing mistake is analyze, no music. Structure, no music. Rhythm, no music. So if you say, it's just such a overwhelming piece, and we make music, then you have no structure. The audience at a certain point, they walk out, or they come with earplugs, and you see, and that is what one has to do. And I tell you, the point here, the conductor's point, is not the very best point to hear all the details. And every hall is different. So during the rehearsal, it's different when the public is in. So it's also one of the reasons because I don't like guest conducting so much. So if I know a hall like here, know an orchestra, then it is much nicer and you have more results in a shorter time.
That's true.
Otherwise you have to sometimes first rehearsals with a new orchestra in a new hall. You think I don't know, I'm navigating. So somehow, are they really playing and do they have happy faces, or do they look unhappy because something is so wrong?
Do we have happy faces?
Oh yes, you do.
We do.
Oh yes, yeah. I had a good impression yesterday.
No, we have happy faces. One of my favorite quotes of yours in the rehearsal was, "Ladies and gentlemen, be happy if you only see one forte written."
Yeah.
Because that's actually a quiet passage in this
You
piece.
see, sometimes as a conductor, you have interesting experiences. For example, Meistersinger Prelude. So you start the rehearsal and everybody's in a good mood, C major, and you begin with... They play more than a forte, and you usually say, it's the first thing what one says after interrupting the first time, but please be aware of the fact it's only forte. Yeah, because otherwise you have no development. So that is that in this kind of music, it's really be happy if there's only one forte.
I think opera orchestras are happy to play forte because most of them have to play for another 5 hours after the overture. So
yeah, but they are also happy if one can say reduce. I mean, you have played also Strauss operas and you know how long they are. And Frau ohne Schatten, or even, let's say, Götterdämmerung, also it's Wagner, Siegfried, can be so loud. And you really, you wonder, how can a singer resist? I mean, the voice, they have 2 vocal cords, and at a certain point one has to realize that also a really very gifted soprano has limits, and the tone production probably then the notes are not so beautiful anymore. And what one has to do as a good Kapellmeister, and therefore I prefer the word Kapellmeister, even if in English-speaking countries Kapellmeister means very often, or too often, it's a misunderstanding that one says, he's not a conductor, he's only a Kapellmeister, which means boring and 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's it. No, Kapellmeister means, for my taste and for my after my experience, that you know these things. Where do you have to reduce? Where do I have to follow? Where can I let them come on, play? And sometimes it has no sense to follow a singer. Then you cover him up and say, that's my part now, and just be where you want to be. That's not very polite, and that is not happening very often. Usually you work together, and this is the same with an oboe player or someone that offers you a beautiful solo horn player. And so I decide very often then to follow, and I think, listen to her or to him or so. But that's a decision you take in the moment.
Speaking of vocal cords, we have lots of vocal cords on stage with us for the first half.
Yeah.
These 3 Brahms songs that are very unusual, actually. I'd never heard any of them, and I looked to see where we played them before. I couldn't see.
No.
They're rarely played.
I have done them the last time, more than 10 years ago in Rome with the Santa Cecilia chorus, and they are 2 or 3 more. I mean, Alt Rhapsody, that's a famous piece. But there are some more, and they have all. You think it's a second Requiem, kind of this kind of atmosphere, and with the Rundfunkchor, it's an enormous pleasure, and it's a chamber music making, and also there, going where you need a little bit more fat, and where it has to be then very soft, but softness doesn't mean without tension or without Spannung and so on. I mean, these pieces are wonderful, and I think for the public it's a discovery. It's
the first time you worked with the Rundfunkchor, isn't it?
Yeah, and I always wanted to, and I'm so happy that I do. And we had such a wonderful contact from the first rehearsal. It was just wonderful, and I'm really looking forward.
Yeah, fantastic. Meister Thielemann, we're just about out of time, but there was one thing, a nice little story.
About the neighbors.
I've got 2 little stories, actually, from my colleagues. One of them, Axel Gerhard, our leader of the second violins, he lived next door to you, and he remembered you practicing the piano with all the windows open. And he said, even then, way back then, when you were a kid, he knew you were going to go far. And that even as a kid, you were quite a cheeky kid, and you said to him, well, I never hear you practicing, Herr Gerhard.
Yeah. No, they have, I think, neighbors, even if their gardens are big, they hear many things, and sometimes things they shouldn't hear, but it was, the problem is the room I practiced in has a very large window, and even if there's over the window there are some, he was right, some things to open, but even if everything is closed, the window vibrates, and I think it makes even the sound stronger as it is. And we have a wonderful old Bechstein piano flügel at home, and it's 2 meters something, and obviously a sound comes out. Okay. And I always like to have a.
So we've cleared that one up.
Yes, but it was nice with them.
The other story which I liked very much was from Wolfgang Tarlitz, a viola player in our orchestra, who played with you in the German Youth Orchestra a few years ago, not that many years ago, of course. And he remembered that in the viola group you had a girl who studied. She was a graphologist, so she studied the psychology of handwriting.
Oh God.
And he remembered this girl taking a sample of all the viola players' handwritings. Do you remember this?
Yeah, I do.
May I tell it?
God,
or
No, you tell it.
And then she called a meeting of all the viola players, and Wolfgang, who's very intelligent and he's very intellectual, he was sitting at the front, and he said he expected to have the best things said about him. You were sitting at the back looking very bored, and this girl got up and she said, "So I have the results of my test. Thielemann, he was the most intelligent, he'll go far." And Wolfgang was furious.
Oh yes, but we became good friends, and then sometimes you have these friendships dating back so many years about it's chamber music or in youth orchestras playing. That's so nice if you see.
The best
oh
friends.
Yes, oh yes, even also with our neighbors, and I mean. It is something, and music brings people together, and that's something. And sometimes it's also loud, as one knows that if somebody repeats and repeats and repeats the same passage, certainly a neighbor can get,
Well, we were happy to repeat same passages this week. We had a lovely week with you.
Yes.
We hope we'll see you back very, very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.